I never played many shooters in my past. To be honest, I tried whatever was available in the local internet cafe during my childhood, which wasn't far away from the ranks of Counter-Strike 1.5 and Half-Life. That was long ago when I was just a kid who thought that strategies are generally for smart kids and shooters are for meatheads or cocky guys with too much self-esteem. So I focused on RTS games, RPGs and MMOs, because after all, a strategy is what a real commander will use in wartime to defeat the enemy, not in games where people try to shoot each other. Right. Now, let's use more educated language to explain the situation before my sudden realization. When I was younger and dumber, I basically had this vague, rudimentary feeling that shooter games enhance that part of the cognition that deals mainly with visual perception and hand-eye coordination. That appears to be true, and there are evidential studies showing us results in test groups revealing build-up in core perceptual processing, higher contrast sensitivity, faster visual information processing, expanded useful field of view. Basically, this is what you will level up while you try to put your cursor on someone's head. When it comes to strategy games, however, there are studies that show real-time strategies emphasizing on building up executive functions, and the same is also more or less true for the game chess, which is basically a turn-based strategy. Now, the executive functions are in short your planning and problem-solving skills. This includes attentional control, the ability to tune out distractions, which is called cognitive inhibition, inhibitory control, aka the skill that allows you to stop your impulses, working memory, which gladly needs no introduction, and cognitive flexibility, which is the cherry on top. It is basically your ability to adjust your thinking to the situation that makes your miserable virtual existence complete. This includes mental flexibility, mental set shifting, cognitive shifting, task shifting, and attention switching, all dealing with adaptation to changes. Recently, two meta-analytic studies came to my attention, and after reading them, it became known to me that real-time strategies are also action video games, so both fall in the same category according to the people who conducted them. What's the big deal with that, you might ask? The results show that obviously real-time strategy games and shooters make us think in a similar fashion, therefore promoting cognitive training specifically in the areas that I mentioned. This happens mainly because action video games demand using these specific cognitive attributes, and since we know that the brain works in a fashion similar to the way muscles do, the whole thing can be shortened to the following sentence: if you use your head, it levels up over time, eventually. Of course, the results in the meta-analysis show that different games have an affinity towards one or the other of the cognitive processes, but this is mainly due to the way the games were built. Strategies, in the most cases, whether it will be an RTS or turn-based strategy, won't demand much from your visual perception in the majority of cases, but will demand from you to use executive functions a lot. A shooter, however, will challenge both with emphasis on visual perception, especially when the speed goes up. At first glance, a fast-paced shooter should require better aim, better reactions, and better visual perception. It might not demand from you to plan or to adapt simply because of the speed of the action. You generally might have no time for this. But if you think, for a moment, this ain't exactly right. The best players in the fast-paced shooter genre do plan their actions and the actions of others, and also have to adapt to new problematic situations. They simply learned how to do it in the tempo of the game, and it's only because they spent so much time in it. Tactical shooters, for example, have a slower tempo, a beat that resembles the beat of a real ranged combat. You basically have more time to analyze the action. Speaking of the combat tempo, I also noticed that it's not the same all the time. The game pace changes in the different interactions, depending on the environment, distance, number of enemies, their skill, abilities, and so on. Some shooter games go further and incorporate survival or other mechanics that make things even more intricate, and to be honest, I fell in love with them exactly because of that. Maybe also they feel more real. Yet, all that is not the answer to the question of whether shooters are strategies. This whole thing simply led me to the next part. What exactly is a strategy? The answer is simple. A strategy is a plan, one designed especially to bring you closer to achieving a certain goal. The word comes from the Greek strategia, which means generalship, and is related to warfare, as you might have imagined. The way I see it, you can have a strategy for almost everything, from cooking to business and life in general. We have managed to classify and record some of the most adaptive and useful strategies in order to teach other people how to apply them successfully. Sometimes different people have devised different ways to achieve the same goal, so basically the world is full of these blueprints that wait for you to master them. Now back to shooters. If you still think that they're about running and gunning or spraying and praying, you're terribly wrong. It doesn't matter if you play Quake Champions, Insurgency, Arma 3, War Thunder or whatever fancies you. If you charge in a forward direction without utilizing the environment and generally without a thought, you are cannon fodder. I must confess I dislike the beat of the fast-paced shooters, but I can see how basic tactics like strafing, jumping and moving around corners and covers helps a lot to sustain life for long enough and hopefully come out a winner. Such practices push the opponent to constantly recalculate the situation and in a way hack his brain, therefore making his job of defeating you more demanding, especially if he or she is untrained. A quick example. For moving opponents, there is the practice of shooting at the enemy's future position, called leading the target. It is something aces in World War I and II trained for, as the air combat demanded it due to the speed of flying. On the other side of the gun, you can imagine in the clouds, where there is no way to hide behind cover, you have to rely greatly on outmaneuvering your opponent and be as unpredictable as possible. Quite similar to the tactics in shooters. In games like Arma 3, Rainbow Six Siege or War Thunder, you have to utilize covers, move from one rock or house wall to another, and choose your path and timing well, because you might get hit and lives are lost very easily here. In this world, strafing is called flanking, and cover fire is a thing that you might want to utilize, especially when you have a buddy on your side. Now, to wrap things up, because I talk too much, tactical shooters do favor more thinking, due to the tempo and short health bars, but the fast-paced shooters aren't an exception, and mindless action won't help you excel. I would like to take a small detour and think about what basic and advanced military training teaches soldiers, with all the obstacle courses, tactical shooting, working in team and formations. The goal is to imprint the basic strategy in the brain so it can become second nature, help survival and lead to achieving the objectives, of course. Any similarities between these games and real-life warfare are not accidental, they're a simulation, a mind simulation, just with guns. Next time you play with your friends, think deeply of your strategy. Develop tactics that will make you work as a unit, cohesive, smart, coordinate attacks, create a cover fire to provide gaps so your friends can move into a better position, flank, cover your six and any angles that might become your opponent's entry points. Try to predict outcomes, fail again, until you succeed. It's all planning and taking the right decisions at the right time. It's a strategy. And if you think for a moment that this is just a game, then why your brain works the same way, like it's real? Remember to play smart. So please check below the video. I have made a list of YouTube channels that focus on the strategy and shooter games, also other interesting stuff. Enjoy.